In this video we're going to go over another step in solving right angle trigonometry problems, and in particular the third step, which is determining the trig function. And to determine the trig function we need to know what the acronym or the mnemonic SOHCAHTOA stands for. So if I write SOHCAHTOA up here, SOHCAHTOA. Now for many of you this is a new thing, but if you were to ask your parents at night tonight, you'll probably find out this is one of the few things they remember from high school maths. A lot of Kiwi kids have learnt this over the years, and it's certainly one of the few things that I certainly remember from high school maths. So SOHCAHTOA actually means something. There are three parts to it. We've got the SOH, we've got the KA, and we've got the TOA. And each of these represent one of the three trig functions that we use. S for sine, okay, C for cosine, or cos as we call it for short, and T for tangent, or tan. And these are all buttons on your calculator which we'll be going over as well. So each of these are angle functions to do with right angle or any sort of angle trigonometry. So we're going to be using SOHCAHTOA to do this. What the O and the H, the A and the H, and the O and the A mean are what sides of the triangle. Remembering that when we looked at the previous steps, when we had, say, your active angle here, we named the parts of the triangle. So H is for opposite the right angle, we had the opposite and we have the adjacent. And you'll notice they all represent parts of each of these functions. So the opposite and the hypotenuse for sine, the adjacent and the hypotenuse for cosine, and the opposite and the adjacent for tangent. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over examples of this and how we use that. So let's have a look at a right angle triangle. Here we go, here's our right angle triangle. And if we go through the previous two steps quickly, let's just imagine that we've got an angle here. Let's call this 35 degrees, just as an example. Let's say we've been told the hypotenuse is 15 centimeters in length, and we're trying to find x. And of course our first two steps would suggest, well, first of all, here's our active angle. I've sorted that out. So therefore I know that this side is the hypotenuse, and x is representing the opposite side, and the side that doesn't have anything next to it is the adjacent. And what you do then, and you'll only do this to start with, eventually you'll get this in your head, but if we write out SOHCAHTOA just off to the side here, what we can then do is match up which letters we're using in the actual problem. So you'll notice here on the triangle, the hypotenuse, we have a number next to it which is 15 centimeters. So that means we're using the hypotenuse. So I'm just going to tick the H's. Then you'll notice on our triangle here, we're looking for the side X. Okay? And because we're looking for the side X, that means we are using that side. So when we say we're using a side, it's either the sides or the angles that we have a value for, or we're looking for the value for. And in this case, we're looking for x, and that's represented on the opposite side. So we'll tick the O's. The adjacent side, this side down here, we're not after. There's no letter next to it in terms of x or y, and there's no suggestion here that we're even looking for the length of that side. So in this case, we just ignore it. We're not using the adjacent side to solve this particular problem. So if we go back up to our SOHCAHTOA mnemonic up here, SOHCAHTOA, here it is here, you'll notice that we've ticked O and H for in this section here, and we've only ticked the H there, and we've only ticked the O there for the TOA part. And where we have the two ticks is the SOH, and that tells us, because we've got the two ticks here, that that's the function we're going to use to solve this problem. So therefore, to solve this problem, we are going to be using the sine function. And we'll be going on to how we do that in the next step, in the next video. Let's do one more example so that we can just double check how we're going. So if we put another triangle on here, let's just do that one there. There's our right angle. Let's say this angle here is 55 degrees, and we've been given the hypotenuse of, I don't know, 18 meters, and we're looking for this side here. Again, we go through our identifying the active angle. Here it is, it's 55. And then we label a triangle. So we've got the hypotenuse here because that's opposite the right angle. This side here, the X is the opposite because it's opposite the active angle, and the side we're not using is A, the adjacent. I then write out SOHCAHTOA, so I'm going to run out of room here, so I'll put just TOA down here, and I go through and I tick what I'm using. So I'm using the O and the H and the O, and lo and behold again, like the previous example, I'm using the sign. That's basically how you do step 3.